Hi everybody, I'm here like usual. Recently I bought Five Guys for the first time. It was expensive and they gave me a bunch of fries. And overall I'm pretty content with what I was given. It was a good meal. Anyway, I hate the Timmy Turner channel. Alright, that's a bit of a strong word, but I would say of the big three, it has the most inconsistent track record for a number of reasons. It makes the most iconic shows, but that's not the same as the best shows, and for a number of reasons, it lingers as one of the ones that I have the most mixed feelings with, in part due to the network's strategy of obliterating any decent performing shows if they don't do amazing, leaving only major heavy hitters a lot of the time. But in exchange, they last for way longer when they hit, and in some cases, longer than they have any right to. Fairly Odd Parents, Ren and Stimpy, Rugrats, all these shows lasted incredibly long, got spin-offs, continuations, all that. The problem is that they really aren't too great to begin with. They're just fine. It might be them aging, but I don't see these being shows that should have been as prevalent as they have been. If they came out now, they would do fine at best. I mostly say this with a bias because the gross out humor has never really been my thing. Nickelodeon in specific, I'll never watch while I eat. The furthest I go is like SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, Last Airbender, and then I don't know, Doug, they're not too bad. Compared to Cartoon Network and Disney, I feel like I have a bit more time spent behind these orange bars of slime and full of feet and SpongeBob. My siblings love the sitcoms. Nick had the better sitcoms between it and Disney, and I would have to watch Cartoon Network in my own time. So yeah, a lot of iCarly, Victorious, Drake and Josh. None of these three were all too bad. I think each of them were honestly still really funny, if only for the fact they hold up because these actors did pretty well for what they had. I would say iCarly was definitely my favorite of the bunch. I enjoyed all of them, but the insanity of the pyrokinetic Spencer, Tebow, Gibby, the Buttersock, Michelle Obama, whole bunch of things that stay in my memory. Drake and Josh was another frontrunner for the same reasons, really being these middle and high school kids all being incredibly good at acting within weirdly paced forms of entertainment in these sitcoms. As we keep going though, the modern and past sitcoms were just alright. The older stuff feels stronger between the two, and biting the bullet right now, I really must stress that this is not the place to look at the objectively horrible things that happen behind the scenes. I'd recommend Quiet on Set or Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died if you want good ways to respectfully comprehend why a major portion of Nickelodeon's work in particular is going to be remembered in infamy and distaste, and justifiably so. Nickelodeon includes a flawed collection of shows for a number of different reasons in production and in final product. It feels impossible to look at the greater timeline of Nick without at the very least knowing what it took to get there. Like in the end, this is a business, but also one that I'm not at all viable to be the one to discuss the bad stuff. It's just a lingering collection of problems on a permanent record. But critically, the Haunted Hathaways and Thundermans, in my eyes, aren't very good. They're extremely whatever, run-of-the-mill types with a couple gimmicks. I tried to like them, I really did, but could not for the life of me figure out why they get any sort of appeal other than nostalgia. But maybe all sitcoms are like that. It's just the thought of being your sitcoms that let them stay in a positive light. Nah, Drake and Josh was objectively better. Sorry if you don't like them. I don't. Ricky, Nikki, Dickie, and Dawn is Zach and Cody if they did mitosis, and Arwen's the father somehow. Also, it's worse. Then there's Henry Danger, which from what I've seen has its moments, so give it a couple years before we get video essay retrospectives of this show that last several hours. And then Game Shakers has nothing. The only things that people are gonna remember this one for are the cameos. So all in all, hate to claim it, my generation of Nick sitcoms were better. Not even saying that with a bias. They were, but some other ones that get the pass include Keenan and Kel, Zoe 101, Ned's Declassified. I'll give them the Choop seal of approval. They were fun. This wasn't my time, but you know, I would be lying if I didn't say I had fun with the limited amount of episodes I watched between all of them. But again, the newer stuff is at the disadvantage of being newer. We don't have as much recognition or familiarity with it. Maybe as time proceeds, we're gonna find one of these sitcoms to be incredibly well made, but we don't know yet. But who cares about that? I know my audience, I know you freaks. You wanna see the cartoons, you gotta see those flashing colors or else you'll collapse into a fine paste. Well, let's get the easiest ones out of the way. SpongeBob, good. Modern SpongeBob, okay at best. Rugrats, solid. Chucky Finster is lodged in my cranium like the little freak he is. Fairly Odd Parents is just fine, if not bad in the average. Only a portion of it is actually good. Their highlight was Channel Chasers by far. Avatar, very strong. Original 3 seasons are very well done. Stop trying to make this a franchise. The more you try, the worse the legacy is gonna seem. With that being said, I'm looking forward to the new stuff. You know what I hate though? Loud House. Had to see this one a lot because of younger kids wanting to watch watch it whenever it showed up in any form of social interaction involving a TV. I know the art style is supposed to be like a Sunday comic, but there's not really much essence here, I should say. When the most memorable things to come out are these shitty DeviantArt pictures of like the main kid dying, you have something rancid on your hands, and the longer it exists, the more despicable it feels. This show is about to turn 10 years old and it got 2 spin-offs. It never had to be this way. Loud House is simply a bad Hey Arnold. In contrast, Hey Arnold is a lot of fun. I watched a good amount of episodes of the classic run at my grandma's, then I saw both the movies, and you know what? There's a vibe here I can't quite put my finger on. I wonder if Arnold's ever gotten in like a tight space and his head was caught in or on something. I feel bad for his mother. But anyway, Hey Arnold works because it feels genuine. More than any other show, it feels like it respects all ages. There's some obscene moments, but a lot of the time it feels like a genuine attempt to convey what city life is like. Arnold is a good kid and has a bedroom that was insanely cool. Like, this is a top 10 contender for best houses in cartoons. In total, I would argue that there's 3 eras of Nick animation. Classic runs, the newer-ish stuff that all looks annoying, so I'm simply gonna assume it's all annoying, and then that sweet middle spot, just as good, if not better, than the classic era that came before it. There's a strong lineup of 80s and 90s cartoons like Cat Dog, about a cat and a dog stuck together. Simple, effective, great show. I always felt bad for Cat between the two, but he was kind of a dick, so it was partly deserved. Then we got Doug, another one of those slice of life type shows. In later seasons, he was sent over to Disney, so there's a technical debate about which network this show is meant for. This is in specific a franchise I could see on either network, but I'm not all too sure where Doug lives anymore. And I'm sad that he has such an indecisive home life. Doug follows a kid named Doug. He lives a relatively normal life, has a dog, a majority of it is, it's okay. I would say that this one is slightly worse than Hey Arnold, if only because it looks a bit weaker. But I do like how most of the shows of this era look. They all give a simplistic and warm art style. Doug is the exception for me, if only because you can tell it's a Disney cartoon, because those ones tend to hold more shading and lower saturation, whereas Nickelodeon tends to exaggerate their shapes. A lot of their characters are angular or extremely circular. A lot of cases do both to create a defined and consistent general group of designs. But the best of the classic, shining above all others if you ignore classic SpongeBob, Rocko's Modern Life, about a little Australian wallaby fella trying to survive whatever struggles show up in the ever iconic year of 1993-ish, probably. This show gets funnier the older it gets, and I hope historians rely on this as a credible resource. The average episode of Rocko's Modern Life followed the little guy interacting with some of the oddities of North American culture at the time. Things like credit cards, gyms. I see a lot of talk regarding the episodes about making animations and conversation. The weakest part of this one has to be the actual characters, though. I don't think anyone outside of Rocko really stays as heavy hitters in memory or in history. Like, you got Rocko, the main guy, average lead, a little bit more scared, a little bit more frisky. Then you have Heifer, kind of annoying best friend, instigates a lot of the conflict necessary in many of the episodes. The rest muddle enough to where casual viewers don't pick up any of the characters, maybe the frogs or Rocko's dog or Filbert, but that's about it. A big factor of this comes from the memeability. You know damn well Nick likes their memes. I mean, look at YouTube's, look at all their merch. They know they have it. SpongeBob gets a new meme every 4 months. Jimmy Neutron shockingly managed to get a lot. Most of the other shows will get 1 or 2, but I think of the Rugrats pudding scene, the little dude in Cat Dog who walks in and out, the wild thornberries smashing and Donnie's gibberish, and the one in My Life as a Teenage Robot that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm embarrassed I even have to know about it. You know who never got one? Rocko. It's killing Rocko stocks, and nothing's done about it. It'll fade to obscure nothingness in the general public, just like Real Monsters, another earlier show that I want to be nice, but I'm honestly glad this one's forgotten. Icky. Even if this isn't entirely right, I perceive any cartoon Nick has produced since like 2012 just weaker. They are already starting at an uphill battle. In part coming from the art styles presented here. Nickelodeon's always been a bit more ugly, a lot of their stuff, in part because I think classic Choopo, do not mistake it with me Choopo, different Choopo, being the biggest offender with all these large abnormalities that are supposed to be people. Again, Real Monsters, who was this for? They look like Mr. Meaty puppets animated, and do not get me started on Mr. Meaty, they scare me. As Told by Ginger and Wild Thornberries worked with their art, and don't get me wrong, it's just being dragged in by the new stuff feels annoying and as saturated as the thumbnails on my main channel. By the way, these two shows were pretty average in terms of legacy and quality, I'd say. Thornberries was just slightly slightly stronger, if only for the emotional moments that felt more effective. This is when Nick started doing this one season slammer thing, where if a show wasn't an instant hit, they would get banished to the alternate hellscape of Nicktoons, where they get left to die. Nicktoons should be like the older shows, gaining more traction through easy reruns, like what Teen Nick does, or Nick at Night, especially if it's far less accessible. Instead, we gotta deal with the repeating cycle of show releasing, not instant hit, goes to Nicktoons, dies after 2 seasons tops. Being sent there means that the show is coming to an end, regardless of how you enjoy it. The only new things in about 15 years to survive this cycle have been Loud House, again ew, and recently Rock, Paper, Scissors, following 3 roommates with differing personalities in an object-themed world. I thought it was funny, and it really does have the potential to become a long-lasting entry in the group, if only for the fact it's a simple premise that is executed really well. On the other end, most of the shows that failed are either spin-offs or blatantly bad. Bunsen is a Beast, Planet Sheen, and Pig, Goat, Banana, Cricket are all horrible and were dropped just like that. Sanjay and Craig, not my thing, with the highlight being Snoop Dogg. Breadwinners sucks. SpongeBob's been getting a lot of new spin-offs lately, and all I can think about is these are shows that exist for the sole purpose of occasionally being clipped on Twitter by hyperfixating fan accounts that show up on my timeline once and never again. But then there's casualties like Harvey Beaks, made by the guy who did Chowder and Jellystone, with a lot of the same general tone and humor. I think this one could have, and honestly should have, lasted longer. But you know what? It is what it is. It's a long gone attempt to make us wonder what if. I remember this weird one. It had to be Robot and Monster, a 1-season show that pretty instantaneously was as over as quickly as it released. This does not feel like a real show. This feels like something that shows up in a lucid dream, and it even existing is conflicting to me. But of course, we got the best era because of me, my personal bias, because it's my video. I'm in charge. I liked calling this the Nicktoons Unite era, in part because of the crossovers under the shared name. Ooh, this is something that hit. Nick had some decent crossovers via holiday specials or extended events. The best of the best has to be the games. You get SpongeBob and whoever the hell else and put them into a multiplayer adventure game. The best one was probably Attack of the Toy Bots, but this was the way all characters would interact and still get some attention even long after their shows have been gone. Like even recently through a Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 with a good game and characters throughout a majority of the network's history besides recently, because again, they don't really have anything. And a good chunk of the shows featured were big names of the time. Danny Phantom, almost like Nick's attempt against Ben 10, that absolutely had its moments. Wasn't a big favorite for me, but I saw the appeal where it was. Meanwhile, Invader Zim lurked and roamed across Hot Topic, like poachers among the African savannah. It was everything. It was Has-Been Hotel before Has-Been Hotel. My personal favorite aspects here are the angular designs of everything, and the humor being a strong point, if not at least a little bit random, but overall still funny. Yeah, you know, the show has occasional problems with the random funny, haha, random, oh, so silly, but you know, a lot of the time it had bits that worked.
My name is Dib Membrane. I'm 12 years old.
Out of all the movies Nick cartoons have gotten, Invader Zim is probably the best one that gives a gist of how the movies make something better out of it. Until you remember Jimmy Neutron exists. The first newborn child of every household would gladly sacrifice themselves for more Jimmy Neutron. Jimmy Neutron is my favorite Nick show. Full stop. It's probably my favorite cartoon I've ever seen. I like Jimmy Neutron so much, I went out of my way and met Debbie Derryberry, the voice of Jimmy, and got her autograph on the original movie on Blu-ray. I literally had to shatter my fears of interacting with any sort of person I hold in high regard because I like the big cranium kid show that much. Literally every aspect of this show is wonderful. The vibes and the batshit insanity of some episodes make this incredible. When one of the most tame episodes is Thomas Edison being brought to the future and refusing to go home, you made something wonderful. The Jimmy Timmy Power Hours were the shining beacon of Nick crossovers. The fact that there isn't more effort to do events like these still baffles me. Every character here is funny and have their moments. I don't find myself laughing out loud a lot in a lot of pieces of media, films, shows, any of that. I rarely think it's funny. Jimmy Neutron currently has the highest choopo giggle count, and a lot of them are from more recent events, from me watching it more recently as background noise while I edit videos like this one. I'd say my favorite character might be Sheen, who I think gets overshadowed by Carl Weezer and Hugh Neutron, if only for the fact he's like a reverse straight man a lot of the time. But most of the cast is delightful. Cindy plays her role, Libby is a lot of fun, their teacher, Nick, Jim's mom, that one. Yeah, she's funny too. good show. It's wonderful. But I can't say it was all perfect during this time. There for sure was a couple of duds, both critically and ratings-wise, sometimes both. Cat Scratch and Making Fiends died before they could live. I would say Chalk Zone deserves to be here, but somehow this got 4 seasons? I've never once heard anyone talk about Chalk Zone unless you grew up with it. Someone's gotta look at Chalk Zone. 2 more CGI shows that pale in comparison to the regard of royalty of Jimbo Nutmeg are Back in the Barnyard and Tech. Now, Barnyard was a Nick movie that got made into a show just like Jimmy Neutron did. The difference is that it's not good. It's a movie where a lot of things happen. At the very least, the show's got a couple gags that embrace the more zany side, possibly with CGI animation. That's why it's been immortalized with occasional memes once or twice a year. Tack and the Power of Juju is this show that Nick made based on their own game franchise. I've played some of them, nothing terrible. Another 3D platformer Nitro Reds talked about, and that's totally cool. Not this show though. It's not really. It's kind of bad. One thing I really thought Nick did well, especially compared to the other networks, was have their characters interact with each other. Disney's done that a little bit more recently via the Chibi-verse, but otherwise most of their crossover attention goes to Kingdom Hearts and their sitcom cinematic universe, and Cartoon Network absolutely has their fair share of events and crossovers, but I think Nick was at least the most ambitious about it. And again, this goes back to the Nicktoons Unite saga. Nick made really good games at the time. Their SpongeBob games are classics. They have a bunch of other 3D platformers. Most of their other shows got a platformer or two. I can't lie, I feel like a lot of these were made with care. The biggest issue I see is sometimes the rosters are really indecisive and not good. Going back to Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, they added TMNT reps, they added Rocksteady, and 5 Avatar characters before Timmy Turner, but that's another ramble for another day. But of the other games, ultimately, again, a fun collection of celebrations that are mostly short and sweet. Also, why did they add the Tack villain and Globs of Doom? That was a weird character choice. I'm still upset about that one. Who is he? Who are you? Treylock? Is that your name? Treylock? That's a stupid name. Now, that would be everything, but there's one more highlight that Nick has that gives it another leg compared to its competition, that being the amount of game shows. It's honestly impressive just how many game shows Nick has made so far. This feels like a lost art that only they are capable of doing. And it came to mind when I started going through the VHS horror movies, and one of them follows the aftermath of a game show like one of theirs with a gruesome twist to it. Lost Temple and Double Dare are the stereotypes. They're the ones that come to my mind when you think of more physical non-Japanese game shows, except for maybe like reality shows, which don't count, and also Wipeout, which Nickelodeon stole in their show Splat-A-Lot. This one is literally Wipeout with half the runtime per episode with Nick influence. You can see why it didn't do that well. The biggest difference compared to other game shows comes from the characterization of it. It does a deal or no deal situation where it makes an antagonist a bad guy. A lot of hosts have their characters, but very rarely are there any other people outside of the contestants or hosts that add to the plot or add to the story of a game show that they try to create to keep retention. In Deal or No Deal, it's the banker. In Wipeout, you could say all 3 of the hosts are exaggerated characters. Nick has like a dozen young adults part-timing as role-playing defenders of this castle that children are getting mild injuries from. Apparently, this one was shut down for a number of reasons. Expensive repairs, community uprise, and unpaid taxes were just some of the things I read off the wiki. So I'm taking it as fact, because why would you lie about Splat-A-Lot being canceled from tax problems on Wikipedia? Got a couple ones I remember and specifically did not really like. One of them was Paradise Run, very short-lived show taking place at a tropical resort hosted by Trina Vega from Victorious. I remember this one bothering me a ton because the prizes were literally just extended stays at the resort they competed in, and then also the kids being pulled onto the side and characterized so the fellow children watching would support one of the teams. Hated this one because most of the kids were just reading pre-made cards off camera. It's very clear nobody cared. I can't really imagine anyone voluntarily watching this, especially considering what era this show came from. The best you were getting was early Loud House. It was not worth watching it. There's also Figure It Out. This show had a classic run and then a comeback in the mid-2010s. Most episodes follow the actors of the other shows participating and figuring out things, like the talents people had. There's literally only 3 moments I remember throughout all the episodes, that being the high amounts of slime that were brought on to the actors. Like, all of the rewards were simply getting slimed or not getting slimed. Sierra Bravo from that really good show free on YouTube, Wayne, and also she's in Big Time Rush. I forgot to mention Big Time Rush. It's a fun watch. I like Big Time Rush. 7 out of 10, I guess. She's in so many episodes. She has to be in at least a dozen episodes. She's in so many of them as a player. And then this one time, I remember I was really annoyed with one of the episodes. There was one kid that had their talent guest. It was super niche, cutting celery with cards. This sucks because what happened was all the words got guessed besides celery. And the one who got it right and guessed celery was, again, Trina Vega from Victorious. She gave her soul away to magically know it was celery. Like, that's not a normal guess. In what world would you have a blank space of cutting cards and go, oh yeah, it's celery? That's stupid. I'm figuring you out, Nickelodeon. Oh my God, I remember Brain Sturge. First real show I played along with. I'm being so honest with full confidence. Bring back Brain Sturge. I can and will get first place, I promise. Like the memory minigames, round 1, I will get one stupid one wrong. I will curb stomp the competition. Round 2, story game. It's the most luck base, I can take it. Memory game is a memory game, I win. It is a 4x4 memory card game. But that step game at the end? Well, hold on. The amount of times I've seen people fumble this array of color squares, lose their vacations to amusement parks, only coming home with a Wii Mini. I understand why people struggle here, but I do not care. I will win. Maybe mess up a couple times, but full stop. I feel so confident. Put me on Brain Surge. Put me on Brain Surge. All in all, that's Nickelodeon. Now, recently, there's been a lot more of an effort to use the IPs that they've nabbed. Garfield, TMNT, Smurfs, and Big Nate are all seeking some attention following their working with Nick. The network in specific tends to bring back their old stuff more often. So currently, we're not dealing with reboots of Rugrats and a pretty solid Fairly OddParents sequel. Not the live-action trilogy, not the Demon sitcom. These are good. But hey, maybe at some point I come back and look at the movies. Each network had their own collection of them. Let me know. And same with Cartoon Network and Disney. I haven't talked about them yet. Nick's quality control is indecisive, but I think in the end, improving in all regards is necessary. Otherwise, it's gonna stagnate into nothingness until inevitably it fully rolls onto streaming. All I'm saying is that there's hope to improve from here. Something I do see from this point onward. But hey, that's all. You know, let's subscribe and whatever.
Hey, choopo, it's Wanda, make a wish.
Wow, Wanda from Fairly OddParents. I wish this video would be over. Wow, see you guys next time.